One time, my parents left me behind at a quinceañera because like any self-respecting kid, I fell asleep between two chairs while the adults danced to some really lame songs. Instead of falling asleep at my parents' table, I slept at the back of the hall where the music was quietest. But when it was time for everyone to leave, my parents left and forgot me there, and it was the sound crew who found me just peacefully taking a nap. They had to call the birthday girl so she could contact my parents. Once I was with them, I said, "You guys are too much. Didn't you notice something was missing?" They replied, "Yeah, but we didn't know what." Once, when I was 6 years old, I was almost traumatized for life because my uncle Don Pulgan told me that a little plant was going to grow in my stomach because I had eaten a raw bean. And I was scared to death because I thought,
The little plant is going to reach the sky and I'm going to die.
So that night, my stomach started making really weird noises and I thought branches were already growing out of me. So crying, I told my mom,
Mom, I'm going to turn into a carnivorous plant.
and in the end, of course, my mom beat up my uncle for lying to me and making me cry.
I'm wild, I'm really crazy, I'm wild,
Once when I was in middle school, I thought I had signed my academic death sentence. Because my buddy Huevo swore to me that he had the leaked exam and that if I studied it, I'd pass without a problem. So feeling confident, I didn't crack open my notes. But when the day of the exam came, I saw the questions and started sweating like a pig in a sauna because nothing matched. So I begged the teacher to help me and he said, "Let the devil help you, you dumb kid." And in the end, my friend Huevos tells me, "Dude, you won't believe it, but that exam was from 3 years ago," and I was like, "No!" That day I discovered the true meaning of academic betrayal.
Time to study!
Once when I was 7 years old, I was taking a bath and I almost went blind because shampoo got in my eyes. And honestly, I don't know what the hell they put in that shampoo. But I felt my life pass by in slow motion and I screamed like I was being exorcised. So I ran out of the bathroom with red eyes, looking worse than someone high, or like my aunt crying while watching her afternoon soap opera, and my mom sees me and she says,
What happened to you?
and I told her, "Nothing, I just found out I'm allergic to taking a shower." And since that day, I wash my hair with swimming goggles on because I'm not dumb enough to risk it twice.
And always be sure to keep the soap out of your...
One time when I was going to school, the very same Miss Mitochondria from biology took 33 points off my grade because she said I never paid attention. But that day I swore I was listening to her until she asked me the difference between an animal cell and a plant cell. So I told her, confident in myself, the plant cell has chlorophyll and the animal cell has cholesterol, and the whole class started laughing at me. So I begged her to give me a chance to earn my points back, and she said, "If you answer just one question correctly, I'll raise your grade." And the question was super easy, but I got so nervous that I froze. And in the end, she said, "Relax, champ, at least you didn't get a 5. And she gave me a 5.9. One time when I went to my girlfriend's house, a tragedy happened to me because I went to the bathroom to take a dump, but there was no water that day. And I had to put the tamarinds in my pants pocket because I was in the bathroom just relaxing. But then I heard my mother-in-law say, "Who's pooping? There's no water." And no way, I just opened my eyes wide and said, "Nobody, don't worry, it's just number 1. So well, the poop scared me. And then I tried to flush the toilet and sure enough, there was no water. My last resort was to put it in my pants pocket and run home. And that's what I did. Actually, my girlfriend got mad at me because I didn't say goodbye to her. But it was a sacrifice I decided to accept. One time I almost blinded my friend Pansas because I brought a green laser to school that I had bought at the fair. So I said to Pansas, "Hey man, this laser is really powerful." And he says, "How much will you give me if you point it at my eye?" And I was like, "What's up with this guy?" And I said to him, "Pansas, if you want money, just ask for it." And he told me no because he didn't beg for money. Then he said, "If you give me $100, I'll let you point it at my eye." And well, I was just a kid, so I said okay. But Pansas wore glasses. So the beam was even more powerful and I pointed it at him. But in the end, later on, he told me he saw a black spot in the center of his eye for more than a week. One time an old lady thought my girlfriend was pregnant, and honestly I got scared because I thought to myself, old ladies know things. But actually she thought that because we were at my grandma's birthday party. And then my aunt came over and said to my girlfriend,
Sweetie, do you want a pina colada with alcohol?
but she replied, "No thank you, I can't drink that right now." But next to her was Mrs. Chinchita, and she said,
Oh, we're going to have a new baby. We need to plan the baby shower.
but actually my girlfriend couldn't drink alcohol because she had taken some medicine, not because she was pregnant. One time when I was sleeping, I had a really horrible nightmare because I was dreaming that I couldn't run. So to prove to my dumb brain that it wasn't real, that day I told my family to go to the park, and at the park I started running faster than my uncle's speed. But then a Rottweiler dog started chasing me, except this one actually had all 4 legs. And the good thing is that in the end, I climbed onto a truck so it couldn't catch me. One time at Christmas, I got a gift that changed my life, but not for the better, because I open my presents and I see an Xbox 360 box and I happily say to my mom,
Awesome, Mom, it's what I wanted.
and quickly I opened the box to see what was inside, and it was soaps and shampoos for hair, and crying I say to her,
Is this a gift or a punishment? What did I do wrong?
and she answered me that it was because I was dirty, and because I only took a bath a few times during the whole year. And so it was the only way to see if I would stop being dirty. And in the end, they did give me the Xbox, and it was an unforgettable Christmas. Because now that I had the Xbox, I bathed even less. Subscribe and tell me a Christmas story in the comments.
Tomando banho no galão para não pagar R$10.
Once when I was 13 years old, I put my mom in the worst national embarrassment. Because the teacher asked how our parents cared for themselves, I confidently replied,
My mom had a vasectomy to lose weight.
and everyone was stunned, as if I had summoned Shabelo Face 66. Then the teacher asked me if I had 2 dads. Then they took me and my mom to the principal's office. And when I told her, she shouted, "It was liposuction, you animal!" And since then, the whole school thought I lived with Juan Gabriel and Ricky Martin. One time, my grandma Chona almost made me want to strangle her out of anger because I went to her house and she asked me to set up her new smart TV so she could watch her soap opera. But ever since I turned it on, I felt like I was hacking NASA because there were like 33,000 apps open. And I asked her, "What did you do with the TV, Grandma?" And she says all calm,
Well, I just pressed where it said accept all.
and then the soap opera starts playing in Mandarin, so I spent like 3 hours setting up the TV, looking for tutorials, and burning my brain out. And in the end, I left it perfect. But my grandma just looks at me and says,
Oh no, just put on the old TV. That one actually works.
one time when I was on vacation, they arrested a gringo at the Barcelo Hotel, and they took him to jail for messing up some people and some of the hotel furniture. My girlfriend and I were just waiting for a bus to our room when a clueless gringo wanted to leave and go to another part of the hotel. But then, a bus came by, and the gringo wanted to get on, but it was the driver's last stop, so he refused to take him. And the gringo got pissed off and kicked the bus and started peeing in the street in front of everyone. And the hotel manager saw him and called the police. So the silly gringo freaked out and started crying, saying,
No, I have money. I'll give you all my money.
but that didn't matter and they still took him to jail. Hey, I'm talking to you from prison. One time, my girlfriend had an explosive tamarind accident in the back of my parents' truck and made a mess everywhere because we had gone to the fair and she ate some tacos. And after that, she drank 2 extra jumbo tamarind micheladas. Then we got on some pretty extreme rides, and I think that messed up her stomach. Because when we were about to leave, she suddenly says, "I have to go, Garcia." And I say, "What? Right now?" And she says, yes, it's an emergency, but she didn't want to use the bathrooms at the fair because she thought they were gross, so we got in the truck. She said she'd hold it until we got home, but she couldn't and the bomb went off. One time, because I was being a player, I almost went to meet my grandma in heaven because my sweetheart, my girlfriend and I had gone to the movies, but I ordered a pizza and she told me,
Give me some pizza. It looks great.
but I told her no because I was really hungry and I was going to eat it all by myself. So in order to keep my word, by the 6th slice I couldn't go on. Even though I was full, I ate the 7th slice, but I couldn't eat anymore, and still I ate it. And halfway through the movie, my stomach started to hurt, and I had to run to the bathroom to throw up. And when I got back to the adder, I told my girlfriend, "Here, my love, since I'm a good guy, I'll give you this last slice of pizza." But honestly, if I ate that slice, I would have been done for. One time, my little cousin Tizok had his Clash Royale deleted and he started crying because his mom had told him to take the beans off the stove in 10 minutes because she was going out. But since Tizok spent all day playing, he wouldn't listen to his parents. So that day when his mom came back from being out, she saw that the beans were burnt to a crisp and she yelled at him,
Tizok, come here.
and Tizok goes over and his mom grabs his phone. She takes it and starts deleting Clash Royale. And Tizok crying says, "No mom, why did you delete it? I was in Arena 5. Once when I was 11 years old, I thought I was going to die because I ate some street tacos of questionable origin because it was nighttime and I was really hungry. So, I went out with my uncle to buy some tacos in an area where there were hardly any dogs. Who knows why? But since we were hungry, we didn't care. So, later that night while I was sleeping, I felt a really strong pain in my stomach and I thought, God take me, but not today. And I jumped up and ran to the bathroom. But since it was all dark, I crashed into the wall. And from the impact, the tamarind popped out of the cave. That night was one of the worst of my life.
Oh my God, I'm pooping myself. The poop is coming out. Oh!
Once when I was in middle school, we had a friend we called Cauliflower who was super filthy. Because one day my friends and I saw his fingernails and they were really black. So in one of those times, my buddy Skeleton asked him, "Hey Cauli, why are your nails always so black, man?" And then out of nowhere, without any shame, he tells us all, "It's because I scratch my butt a lot and I hardly ever shower." And actually my friend Jorge was eating his breakfast, poor guy. And from the disgust, he threw up his ham sandwich that Cauli had given him. And in the end, Cauliflower says, "Let's see if it still smells." Sniff, sniff, and the filthy pig started biting his nails to clean them. According to him, it was because he said they did smell. When my cousin Chuchito had his birthday, they threw him a party in the neighborhood, but everything was ruined. Because in the end, about 10 drunks crashed the party because of my uncle Rubencas. And then the police had to show up. Because Chuchito had his Buzz Lightyear 10th birthday party, but when we were about to cut the cake, my uncle Rubencas says, "Can I invite some buddies? They're chill." But his buddies were all the drunks from the neighborhood, and once they arrived, one of the drunks in the middle of the chaos ended up on top of the cake. Another one already wanted to take the piñata for his kid, and others were peeing on people. So in the end, they had to call the cops to get them out. And poor Chuchito had his party ruined. One time during Christmas, my friend Pepe, who always said the first thing that came to his one and only brain cell, made us embarrassed and laughed to death at Liverpool. Because we were in line to tell Santa what we wanted for Christmas, and Pepe, with all the confidence in the world, says, "I'm even going to tell him how I'm going to die." And when it was his turn, Pepe starts, "Santa, this year I behaved really badly. I wet the bed 37 times. I kicked 2 dogs, I stole some Cheetos, I farted everywhere." And Santa says, just to make Pepe stop talking, "The important thing is that you're honest, son." And we were all in line cracking up. But Pepe's mom was redder than a tomato, and that Christmas we learned that Pepe's honesty is so big it can make Santa sweat. Subscribe if you want a friend like Pepe.
Repent, son of the devil, holy God!
At Christmas, when my cousin Macario was 7, he ruined the holiday magic with something outrageous he said, even though everything was going well. Macario was happy with his new toy car and we were all smiling. Until Macario said to my aunt,
Mom, is the neighbor Santa Claus? Or why did he give you a toy car for me?
And my aunt, redder than the ornaments on the tree, says,
No, Macario, don't say that.
But he insisted and said to her,
Yes, I saw him when you took him out of his car, but Santa uses a sleigh.
And my aunt just wanted the ground to swallow her up, while my uncle said, "We'll talk later, Erica." And in the end, that night was the most awkward but funniest Christmas night of my life.
You exposed us.
One time my dad killed his friend Delphine's fish because one day Delphine was going to leave the city, so he told my dad,
"Hey buddy, can you take care of my 3 little fish? You just have to feed them."
and so my dad agreed. Then one night my dad poured almost half a jar of food into the fish tank so they could eat if they got a midnight craving. But then the next morning we woke up and my dad said, "Look family, the fish are chubbier and they're sleeping." But actually they were belly up and dead because they ate all the food my dad left for them, and poor Delphine got really sad. Once I had a turtle named Monito and the ants ate it because my grandpa Tornillo gave it to me as a gift. But a few months later, we left the turtle in an empty pool we had. But I was 6 years old and I didn't know that if you left it without food and water, well, it could die. So I get up the next morning to go to school and from a distance I see that Monito was very still. And as I get closer, I see like 10,400 ants covering its body. And in my innocence, I said, oh, how nice. They're covering it up to keep it warm. But then my dad comes and tells me Monito is dead, and I was like, once I had a buddy who came in yelling, they left me! And he threw himself on the floor in my living room as if his emotions had run him over. And we all got scared because he was crying like the sound of a stuck vacuum cleaner. My dad wanted to give him some advice. My sister looked up quotes on Pinterest, and the neighbor didn't just stick his ear out the window to listen to the gossip. But my mom, without saying anything, went to the kitchen and came back with a dry bread roll. She put it in his hand without a speech, without drama, as if saying,
I'm here, you're not alone.
So my buddy took a bite and saw himself in drone camera view crying with the bread in his hand. And he laughed and his little heart didn't heal completely, but he realized that sometimes God doesn't talk to you, he gives you a piece of bread.
We're active, brah. Thank you, Telly. Why? Well, because you have to give thanks. Thanks for nothing, thanks for everything. It's all the same to me. Thanks.
Once when they put a giant inflatable reindeer outside the park in the neighborhood to feel the Christmas spirit, Panza said, if I climb it and ride it, I'm Santa Premier. But as soon as he set foot on the reindeer, Tizok shouted, climbing maneuver, soldiers! And all the kids threw themselves onto the inflatable as if it were a medieval war. Moharin tied a scarf around himself as if it were a professional rope, and even my uncle Kagwamon tried to direct the operation from below. Then the poor reindeer started to deflate in slow motion, the red nose sank like the Titanic, everyone was screaming. A kid rolled out like a Christmas ornament and ended up flattened on the ground like a sad tortilla. Since that event, they don't put up decorations in the neighborhood anymore.
Think about you, just remember.
One time, my little cousin Tizok put a sparkler on the back of a kid who lived near our house. But crazy Tizok put the sparkler on Chuchin because we didn't like him. So that crazy guy came up with the idea to look for a 4-fuse firecracker to prank him, but we opened like 17 bags and the quadruple sparkler never showed up. But finally in one of those we found a sparkler that had 4 fuses. So Tizok grabs it, goes to Chuchin and says, Merry Christmas, little buddy. So Chuchin was going to give him a hug. But while they were hugging, Tizok took advantage and stuck it on his back and ran away. In the end, Tizok got blamed. And after the punches his parents gave him, he almost went to heaven. One time, my mom was afraid of rats and one day she almost had a heart attack because she had a cat named Atun. And one day, Atun caught a rat about the size of the ones in New York. So that guy took it to my mom all the way to her bed and put it on her stomach, but my mom was asleep and didn't feel it. But when she woke up, she saw the huge animal on top of her and started screaming all over the house. And the worst part is that she was blaming me because she thought I was the one who put it there. In the end, I said it was the cat and we gave my mom a Coke to calm her after the scare. One time, my friend El Panzas knocked down the school's giant Christmas tree with his whole belly and fell right on top of it. He turned into an overweight Grinch. We were decorating the Christmas tree at school, but El Panzas was...
Why can't I put on an ornament?
And we all told him, because you might fall off the ladder. But he said no, so we let him hang just one ornament. Then I looked away for a moment to get the star from the classroom. Suddenly the whole school heard, ah, boom! And I turned to look and it was Panza lying on the floor who had fallen along with the whole Christmas tree and he broke everything.
Man, this guy took a hell of a hit.
One time, because of the ants, I almost lost my girlfriend and was about to become Chico Palado. Because on a February 14th, my girlfriend gave me some chocolates, but I left them on my nightstand to eat them later. And later on, I go to my room with my girlfriend and we see the chocolates completely covered in ants. Then she sees them and says to me,
Look at your customers, they're already eating your chocolates.
And I quickly went to remove the ants, which by the way bit me. And then my girlfriend says,
You never take care of anything I give you. I won't give you anything ever again.
And she was mad at me for a day. Once when I was 11 years old, my dad woke me up at 5:30 in the morning because I had to go to school at Furry Bear School. When it was time to get dressed, I put on a sock inside out but ended up just staring at a Lightning McQueen sandal for 18 minutes while the TV played in the background.
Sitatir?
The television and radio workers. Then I hear my dad coming to see if I was ready, but I wasn't dressed and I had a sock on inside out and I was staring at a flip-flop. My dad smacked me on the neck to help me snap out of it and hurry up. One time, my friend Rekeson spilled 2 cups of Maruchan noodles on his leg because we were at recess. So he ran to the cafeteria to get 2 shrimp Maruchan noodles with chili, but then when he was coming back, he was running. Then he tripped, but he spilled all the super hot water on his leg, and to make things worse, that day he was wearing shorts. And well, my friends and I saw how his skin was turning white like cheese because of the heat, and poor Rekeson was just screaming. And he had to take off his shorts and his boxers and his junk was showing. One time when I was at a party with my cousins Chicharin and Tizok, those 2 geniuses almost made my head explode because they said to me,
If you shake a Coke, put a couple of Mentos in your mouth, open it quickly and chug it, nothing happens because it's just a controlled reaction.
And I, trusting in their doctorates, did it, but when I did, the Coke exploded like a volcano erupting. My cheeks puffed up like balloons. Tizok thought I was gonna die and that idiot Chicharin almost peed himself laughing. And the worst part is that now they call me the failed experiment. One time when I was in my room, the house started shaking as if Godzilla had landed in the neighborhood because the glasses were vibrating, the windows were rattling, and my grandma was screaming, "God is coming!" But then my little cousin Tizok grabs his backpack, puts in 2 bread rolls, and shouts,
Let's survive, soldiers!
So we all run to the yard, totally panicked because my mom was already saying a prayer. It was real chaos until my aunt shouted, "Idiots, turn off the washing machine!" And in the end, it turned out it was the new TurboSpin 3000 in earthquake mode. One time when I was at the gym, a disaster happened because of me since I was lifting weights I couldn't handle. So I went to a chest machine and put about 50 kilos on each side, but I left my phone on top of the machine thinking I was keeping it safe. But then I did about 7 reps, but at the end I dropped the machine because I couldn't handle it anymore. And because of the impact, my phone got knocked loose. So it hit a metal bar and my girlfriend said, "Look, the phone even went flying." And I confidently told her, nothing happened to it. My phone is strong, it can handle that and more. But when I looked at the screen, there was a hole. Literally, you could even see the battery. One time during Christmas, my family and I were at my grandma's house and we thought someone had thrown a grenade in the street. We were in the middle of praying to celebrate the birth of baby Jesus, and while we were saying Our Father who, boom! There was a really loud noise, so loud that we all jumped. And my aunt Clita, the dramatic one, ran to the furniture and threw herself face down on the floor. But then my uncle went to see what it was and saw that it was some kids who had set off a firework called the Devil's Face. And to hell! I had even thought that Russia was invading my poor town. One time when there was no food at home, my dad ate a kilo of my dog's kibble and my mom saw him. Because my crazy dad eats anything, and his guts are already tough from all the nonsense he eats, and sometimes he even eats 15 tacos for 5 pesos. And that day there was no food at home and he was really hungry. But he told me he was too lazy to go buy food. And at that moment he saw Mickey's dog food and said to me, "Give me a kilo," and he ate it. Once when I was 7 years old, I woke up having peed all over a new mattress my parents had bought me because when I was little, I used to pee the bed a lot. But that day, I was already dreaming that I really needed to pee, but in the dream, there was no bathroom where I was. But then, when I got up around 3 in the morning, I saw and realized that it wasn't just a dream, but that in real life, I had peed myself too. And my parents punished me for peeing and made me sleep on the floor for a week for being dirty. One time, my girlfriend was banned from a restaurant for being very clumsy and messy. We were eating some sandwiches, but when we finished eating, she wanted to wash her hands. So she asked me,
"Where's the bathroom, my love?"
And I pointed out that it was at the end on the right, as always, but then, instead of going into the bathroom, she went into a little kitchen. And she started washing her hands over clean dishes. She even started gargling and then spit it all over the clean dishes. But during all that, I hadn't realized the stupid thing she was doing, so I told her,
Not that, the one over there.
and then she says to me,
No wonder this bathroom looked weird.
and in the end, the manager found out and we got kicked out.
I definitely almost got it right.
Once when I was in middle school, I peed on my brand new school uniform on the first day of classes because I didn't want to go, and my dad gave me a beating. Because I had been on vacation for almost 2 months straight, so my body had already gotten used to being lazy, and I liked spending all night playing. So the night before Monday, I said, I have to go to school tomorrow. What a drag. I think I'm going to pee my pants so I don't have to go. So that's what I did, but it didn't turn out like I expected. Because even so, my dad still sent me to school beat up and peed on if.
You're such a huge jerk.
One time when I was in middle school, my buddy Tripas whispered to me, do you want to see something really insane? And like an idiot, I said yes. But the guy pulled out a little bag with something black in it and whispered to me, it's a human finger. I turned paler than a loaf of white bread. I started sweating cold and said, Tripas, where did you get that? Then the sicko threw it into my hand, and I screamed so loud that I knocked over the bench, my friend Roberta's pencil case, and almost the teacher. And in the end, it was a rotten banana. Since that day, whenever Tripas says, look at this, I run. One time, when at the school's Christmas party they put up a Santa-themed inflatable, Mojaran shouted, let's do the reindeer jump. And before I could tell him no, he was already climbing up on a corner of the inflatable. But Tizok and Panza started jumping so hard that Mojarin was launched like a Christmas projectile straight into a star-shaped piñata. Then the piñata exploded, the candy rained down like a Christmas blessing, and a kid shouted, Christmas miracle! And from that day on, the principal banned all kinds of inflatables. And that day, the event was called The Flight of Mojarin. Once my brother thought that my dad didn't love him and actually hated him, and he was down for like 3 years. Because one day it was Christmas, and my brother went to hug my dad to wish him well, and he said,
Daddy, I love you so much. You're the best dad in the world.
And my dad goes and puts his hand on his shoulder and says very seriously, I love you too, son. So that guy thought my dad hated him and didn't love him. And he went to the bathroom to cry so no one would see him. And I went after him and asked, why are you crying? And he answered,
My dad doesn't love me, dude.
Forgive me, little girl.
one time at Christmas, I was given the job of serving the Coke to everyone at dinner. And it was a big mistake because I'm very clumsy. And there I was with the 3-liter bottle, which seemed calm but was actually a bomb about to explode, because when I opened it, it went boom. And Coke started coming out everywhere, and my grandma screamed in fright because I think she got flashbacks from Afghanistan because of the sound. And everyone ended up soaked in Coke, but the good thing is that I learned a very important lesson. The true Christmas spirit isn't in the dinner or the gifts, it's in the mess.
Coca-Cola foam.
Once my grandpa Screw says he got hit with a hammer like 20 times because one day they had to operate on his knee since it was bad. So when he went to the operating room, he says that during the operation, while he was sedated, they hit his knee like 20 times to drive the pins into the bone so he could walk properly. But I didn't know they were hammer blows. I asked him, Dad Screw, what are hammer blows? He replied, this son, and gave me a knock on the head to demonstrate so I'd understand better. But in the end, even though they hit him 20 times, he didn't walk well. One time, a crazy teacher in elementary school used to insult me and the whole class because according to her, we behaved badly. So every time we did something she didn't like, she would say to us,
You're a bunch of slackers.
And honestly, all my classmates and I who were between 10 and 11 years old had no idea what a slacker was. Until one day, my buddy Simba looked up what it meant and he answered the teacher in front of the whole class totally messed up. And the whole class and I started laughing at what he said, and the teacher felt so offended that she started crying the fool.
My god, this is gonna be epic, guys.
One time when I got on a minibus, I thought it was going to be the last thing I ever did in my life because everything was normal, but suddenly we heard an explosion like a nuclear bomb went off. Then the dramatic people started screaming, it's burning, it's burning. And a man, completely panicked, jumped out the window with his backpack, and I just stood there paralyzed until the driver, really calm, said,
Calm down, it's just a flat tire.
But now, everyone was really traumatized, holding onto their backpacks like they were life jackets. And since then, whenever someone says, let's take the van, I answer, sure, just wait for me. I'll go get my armored suit. One time when I was 8 years old, my buddy Panza said he had created the first homemade rocket chair and that he needed a volunteer. But nobody wanted to, except for himself. But when he sat down and turned it on, the chair started shaking like an Ultra Turbo 3000 washing machine in grime annihilation mode. So Panza shut off, but he only moved about 30 centimeters because the rocket was actually his mom's modified dryer. And when he ended up on the floor all dizzy, he said, I think I broke the speed of sound, and his mom saw him and just said, son, you broke your dignity and my dryer, you're grounded. One time when I was in elementary school, my buddy Panzas and my buddy Diente got into a fight in the classroom, and Panzas knocked out one of David's teeth with a punch. David, also known as Diente, because David said to Panzas,
Hey, Panzas, I thought mammoths were extinct, but yesterday I saw your mom.
So Panzas wasn't going to let anyone make fun of his mom. And right there in front of everyone, he punched David so hard that one of his baby teeth, which was already loose, flew out. Then the guy started crying. But not because it hurt, but because he started looking for his tooth and couldn't find it. So he said that now the tooth fairy wouldn't bring him anything, all because of Panzas. But Panzas told him,
If I were the tooth fairy, even if you left me that rotten tooth, I wouldn't give you a single cent.
What are thy pockets? I think not, you scallywag.
Once I thought the world was ending because out of nowhere a hellish extremely loud alarm started going off saying, Presidential alert! Earthquake in San Marcos Guerrero! And I woke up totally panicked, seeing my life flash before my eyes, and my girlfriend was crying and screaming. But the freaking worst part was that it went off at the same time on both phones. At full volume, at 7:99 in the morning, when your brain still hasn't loaded. And I was half dead. I even thought Al-Qaeda was attacking my poor neighborhood. But then, using the 2 brain cells I have left, I said, dude, wait, I live in Tabasco. Guerrero is like 1,000 kilometers away, come on. And nothing happened. But that alarm made history by frightening us for no reason and waking us as if it were the end of the world. Once when I was a kid, my house almost caught fire because of my friend Tololoche. He had stayed over at my house, and I had a lamp that gave off a really strong light. It was bright enough to light up a soccer stadium. So while we were playing, Tololoche said, dude, turn that thing off or put a towel over it. So I listened to him. But then we were just chilling and started to smell something. Sniff, 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 and Tololoche said, it smells like burning fabric, right? And I said, no way. He already found out that my PlayStation is modded and it's about to burn up. But then we look at the lamp and that thing was putting out a ton of smoke. It was about to catch fire. Good thing we were awake, because if not, we would have woken up in the next world.
Do not let us fall into temptation and deliver us.
Once when I was a kid, I kicked my mom in the stomach and she was pregnant because I was really scared to sleep alone. So I slept with my parents, but I'm a really bad sleeper. And at midnight, I would start kicking everyone who was next to me. And that night, without meaning to, I kicked my mom in the stomach. But I didn't know she was pregnant because it was a surprise. And when they told me the next day, I said,
No, my little brother!
And my mom says to me,
Calm down, son. Everything is fine, but tonight you're sleeping tied up.
And the good thing is that I slept tied up, but my little brother was born. He's silly, but he was born.
Oh man, my brain.
One time, my mom almost made me die of sadness because my grandma Kata had given me 1,500 pesos for my birthday. And I, all excited, went straight to the market to buy myself a parrot that could talk. And I swore it was going to be the star of the house because I even taught it phrases and jokes. But one day when I go to show off my progress to my mom, she says to me,
Sweetie, I gave your parrot to Aunt Petronilla because she was going around insulting everyone.
And I, pale and trembling, say to her, Mom, I spent 1,550 hours teaching it to talk just for you to give it away. And she, all calm, says to me,
Well, thank God, now we have peace and quiet.
So in the end, since she felt guilty, she bought me a lousy goldfish that died after 2 days. One time, during the deadly exam season, I thought I was going to have a heart attack because my buddy Cheese, who was the teacher's son, swore that his mom had given him the exam with the answers and that we'd pass easily. So, I stayed up all night studying like I was about to join NASA, but the genius had grabbed the exam from the wrong group. So, on the day of the exam, I walked in confident, opened the paper, and I couldn't even understand my own name. Then I started sweating like I was running a marathon in the desert. And in the end, I ended up getting 6 out of 50. And Queso, all chill, says to me,
Oops, it was for another group.
honestly, I almost suffocated him with my backpack. Can you believe it?
You're a bastard! You're a bastard! You're a bastard! You're a bastard!
One time, I thought my friend El Panzas had kicked the bucket at a party because he fell asleep with his eyes half open and wouldn't react even if you smacked him. But then, we tried everything but the dude was still stiff like a mummy. So we said, something's weird. And my buddy El Calaca unlocked El Panzas' phone and played him a voice note from his ex that said,
Panzas, we need to talk.
and at that moment, the fool sprang up like he was on a spring and said, no way! What did I do now? He even started sweating. The good thing is he hadn't kicked the bucket, but he woke up faster than when McDonald's has a 2-for-1 deal. One time, my friend La Chupis got a 10 in math, but she was really bad at it. She didn't even know the 2 times table. Then, my friends and I realized that she had made a deal with the school to mop and sweep the school every day after classes. Because the day after the exam, she was walking like a newborn lamb, and I thought, what a brilliant idea, this girl is blessed by God, I'm going to do the same thing. But since I didn't even know how to sweep or wring out the mop, they sent me away, and I ended up getting a 5.
Wonderful move.
Once when I was a child, I thought dogs could talk like humans, but they didn't do it because they didn't want people to know. But one day or so, I thought my dog did talk to me. I was talking to Mickey, my dog, like, Mickey, talk, easy buddy, I won't tell anyone. But my dog would just look at me like, what is this guy saying? But I kept trying and trying. Until one day I said to Mickey, come on Mickey, I already heard you talking the other day. Now I know your secret. And Mickey answered me. He said, oh well, human. Now I'll have to make you disappear for the good of the earth. But then I woke up and realized it was all a dream, but it felt so real. One time when I was at a very expensive restaurant, I almost got thrown in jail because of a misunderstanding. I had gone to pick up my food, so I said, wow, this looks delicious. And just as I had taken a bite, the chef comes over and says to me, that wasn't yours, it belongs to the gentleman next to you. But the gentleman heard him. And he got upset because his dish was much more expensive than mine. And I had already drooled on it, so he said he was going to call the police. But the good thing is that the manager of the place calmed him down. And he changed his dish and I almost had to wash dishes. One time, my little cousin Tizok got his computer hacked because he was trying to download diamonds for Free Fire. Because one day he told his mom,
Mommy, will you buy me some diamonds for my game?
And his mom told him to stop asking for stupid stuff and that he should get to work instead. So the guy, since he really wanted the CR7 skin, decided to search on Google how to be a Free Fire hacker for free diamonds. And he found videos and ways to do it, but all of them were actually to hack him. And in the end, they had to format the computer because of Tizok. One time my grandma got mad at me. She thought I was the worst grandson because I wouldn't share Interjet with her. But the thing is, she once told me,
Sweetie, don't be mean. Share your Interjet with me. I don't have it here and I'm bored.
And I told her, Grandma, I can't because we're far apart in different houses. Well, yeah, I lived 30 minutes away and she thought that didn't matter. But it's not like I had Elon Musk's ultra turbo NASA master 4K internet, so she thought I was being a jerk to her. And every time I went to her house, she gave me a dirty look like, stupid jerk. One time there was a man who thought I was mentally challenged, and he stared at me weirdly because I was at the supermarket and I was eating an ice cream. And during all that time I hadn't spoken and my tongue was frozen. So when I was looking for some canned pineapples, I went and asked a man, good afternoon. Do you know where the canned pineapples are? And in my head I was like, why am I talking like this? What happened to me? But the man looked at me weird and he said, get out of here, you little brat. And damn, what a jerk that guy was. To study. One time a friend ended up in the hospital from watching One Piece because he didn't sleep for almost 52 hours. That guy finishes series with up to 600 episodes like it's nothing. So one day I was about to catch up to him in One Piece episodes and he said, "No way you're catching up to me, over my dead body." And literally his words came true, because he almost went to meet God. But the good thing is he recovered. And since I know he's an addict, whenever I want to watch a movie or a series, I tell him to finish it first to see if it's good, so I don't waste my time, and then he gives me his seal of approval on whether I should watch it. One time my dad almost went blind. He was fixing the water pipes, but he used a crazy technique to save himself. He was using a chemical to fix the pipes, but then since the product wouldn't come out, he pointed it at his face and said, "Come out already, damn thing." And then the liquid shot out right at his face and into his eyes, but the product was so strong that he had to wash it out with water and quickly go to the hospital. And since there was no water, he grabbed water from the toilet and started washing his eyes. Then he ran to the hospital. The good thing is he didn't go blind, but his eyes were redder than a junkie's.
Hello.
One time when I was a little kid, I thought that when people talk to God in prayer, they just went like this. Psh, chak, psh, psh. Nonsense. I did it that way because that's how I heard my grandma and aunts do it. But once at mass with my grandma, I heard her going psh, chak, psh, psh. So I started copying her too, and doing the same thing, and when my grandma heard me, she said to me,
"What are you doing, sweetie?"
I tell my grandma, "Praying, Grandma," and she says, "And why do you just go psh-chak-psh-psh?" But I didn't understand, and then she explained to me that she was actually saying meaningful words, just whispered, and for 8 years of my life, I only spoke to God like this, psh-chak-psh-psh.
养无爪健身操，祝您健康，boom boom。
One time I tricked all my friends when we were playing soccer in the street because I told them I'm going to get some water, I'll be right back. But as soon as I got into my house, I drank water like a camel. But just as I was about to go out, my mom saw me and she said, "Where are you headed, kid? That's enough for today." But I was really confused and I said, "But Mom, the game is good." And she just answered me with a sandal in her hand.
"And it's also good for you to stay at home."
So I had to watch through the window as they replaced me with the clumsiest kid in the neighborhood while I suffered in silence. And why should I care? And why should I care? Once when my little brother was 6 years old, he made my best friend Kalaka feel bad because he told him, "Your grandma is dead." But the worst part is that Kalaka had only said, "Hi Danny," and that crazy kid replied with that out of nowhere. So I turned pale because it was true. His grandma was already gone. And Kalaka just had a traumatized look on his face. And I tried to change the subject, but my dumb little brother still asks,
"Why did he get sad?"
And it's just that he thought Kalaka and I got along like that, but no, we weren't that heartless. Once when I was in middle school, a siren went off that no one recognized and the principal shouted, "Code Red!" And we all went into World War mode. And Tizuk was climbing on the fan. The chubby guy was using notebooks as a shield. And I was praying because I thought it was a zombie attack. It's just that I watched a lot of The Walking Dead. But suddenly all the teachers arrived with totally confused faces. Then the prefect said, "Who activated that?" And in the end, it was a first grader. He pressed a button because it was shining nicely. And that day, the school changed its name. Now it's called Apocalypse Institute.
My God, sir, save me.
Once when Santa brought my nephew a gift in Bapen, he wanted to try out his new video game because he said it was signed by baby Jesus and that made him invincible. But I knew that if I played with him, he would start crying. So I set it to the easiest mode in the world and he thought it was his natural talent. Then every time he killed an enemy, he would shout, "I'm a Christmas legend." But he got intense. He started showing off to the whole family, so I turned off the easy mode without him noticing, and after 20 seconds, the enemies destroyed him. His face was so sad. Even the tree turned off by itself, and that day he learned that not all Christmas gifts are miracles. When I was 11, I thought I'd be a millionaire in 2 days after watching a video claiming you could get rich by investing in Bitcoin. So I grabbed my piggy bank with 69 pesos and I go all excited to a website to buy cryptocurrencies. I see a huge button that says invest everything. And without thinking, I click it, but 3 days later, I was already bragging that I was an investor on Elon Musk's level. But my cousin checks my account and he tells me, bro, you're in demo mode. And that day I learned that I was going to stay just as poor. One time when I was sound asleep, I felt something attacking my face, and it was my dad who had left an industrial fan blowing straight at my face. It was like a military endurance test. But at 3 in the morning, I started dreaming that I was trapped in a Category 5 hurricane, and my mission was to save my bed before it flew away. So I get up half asleep, unplug the fan while shouting, "It's over, the end of the world." And when I did that, I hit my mom on the head with the fan. Then I woke up to her screaming, and that's why I slept really traumatized for a week. Well, yeah. One time I failed at school, and my parents punished me as if I had set the classroom on fire. All because, according to the teacher, I didn't send the homework to her email, but honestly, I did send it. It's just that instead of putting igmail.com, I put imgale.com. So the email went to Narnia, and I ended up grounded for a month. Couldn't even go to the convenience store. And even though I showed them the date, the file, and I even cried in front of witnesses, they told me, because you were being dumb, check before you send. And that's how I learned. But from the trauma, now I even check if I breathe properly.
I don't think this guy is very smart.
One time I didn't want to go to school on the first day of classes because I was really scared, the kind of fear that makes you sweat down to your soul. So my brilliant plan to not go was, I'm going to pee on my uniform, but the worst part is that my uniform was brand new and shiny. It even smelled amazing, but then my mom started getting things ready. Sniff, sniff, the crazy woman said, "Oh look, you're doing great in your afternoon swimming lessons." And even so, she put me in the car, and she took me to school, and I arrived smelling like a skunk, and I learned that you don't mess with my mom.
What? Are you challenging me?
Once, almost, I was going to have to rob a bank. Because I dropped a Hyson 15 Pro Masa in a pipe, and it wasn't mine. It belonged to my cousin Guanabana, but I came up with a 200 IQ idea that saved my life. Because I was with my cousin Guanabana, who was showing off his new iPhone. So I said, let me see it, and he gave it to me. And I said, does this thing fly? And like an idiot, I threw it. But I hadn't seen that there was an open manhole, and the phone went right down there, and Guanabana says to me, "Are you stupid? How is it going to fly? It's a phone, dummy." And I was freaking out, so I went to the drain where everything that gets thrown away ends up at the end of the pipe. And I was there for about 4 hours with a net trying to get the phone back, and in the end, thank God I got it. Once when I was a kid, I got traumatized by the security gates at the supermarket because I was afraid they would go off and people would think I was a thief. But even though I knew I hadn't stolen anything and that we had bought everything, I was still a little scared to walk through it. Because those things sometimes go off for no reason. So I was afraid they would go off and that people and the employees would think I was stealing something. And to this day, honestly, I still get kind of nervous that for no reason they'll go off and embarrass me in front of everyone.
I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared.
One time, as a joke, I kicked my friend Panza in the family jewels with the sole of my shoe. It made him feel like he was going to puke his balls out through his mouth. Because later, my friend Kalaka and I used to mess with Panza a lot because his reactions made us laugh. But one day I was bored in science class. Then, without thinking, I grab my shoe, playful and bold. I take it off. I see Panza standing there and I hit him in the balls with my shoe. Then he stood still for about 2 seconds, frozen, and then he started to react.
Damn, man, you went too far. Now you're really going.
And since I was afraid the teacher would come, I told him, shut up, don't let them hear you. And honestly, poor Panza, he puts up with a lot. Once when I was little, I thought dolphins were smarter than humans, and that one day they would conquer the earth, because that's what they said in movies about the ocean and in dolphin documentaries. But one day I went on vacation with my parents and I told my mom,
"Where are we going?"
She said we were going to a dolphin aquarium. When I arrived, I saw about 700 dolphins. I said, "No way, this is a dolphin revolution." So since I didn't want them to do anything to me, every time I walked past a dolphin, I would say, "You're very smart, you're very smart, you're very smart." And to this day, my parents still make fun of me for that story. They say to me, "Son, you're very smart." One time my dad embarrassed my mom in front of me and my brother. We were in a hotel room and my dad threw one of my mom's dirty underwear onto the ceiling fan because my mom was teasing him, saying she was going to put the underwear on his face. So my dad grabbed it and threw it at the fan, which was on. The fan kept spinning and my mom was trying to get it back, but she didn't know where the button to turn it off was. So my mom started going around in circles trying to get her underwear back, and we all started laughing so hard because she spent about 7 minutes going around in circles trying to reach it until my dad finally turned off the fan out of pity. Hello? One time my mom thought that Canelo, the Mexican boxer, was going to give her 10,000 pesos, supposedly on a Facebook Live. And in the end, she almost got scammed and had all her information stolen. Because one day I saw my mom happier than usual. And I asked her, "What happened, Mom? Good news?" And she said, "Yes, son, Canelo is going to give me 10,000 pesos. And I was just like, "Oof." And she replies, "Yes, yes, look." And she shows me a supposed live video of Canelo where it said he was going to give 10,000 pesos to everyone who followed that Facebook page. They had to download a file sent to them. But the supposed Canelo was just an AI generated photo with a moving mouth and AI voice. In the end, my mom was disappointed. One time my friend Panzas almost killed himself in real life because they made him feel really bad at school because an annoying little girl said, "Let's list everyone at school to decide who we like or not." So after the voting was done, it turned out that most people had voted that they didn't like Panzas, and then that damn little girl went and showed it to Panzas, and Panzas just stood there like that.
What? I thought I was most popular?
So that guy was bummed out for like 2 weeks. One time my dad accidentally scammed a claw machine because he put in 5 pesos, but the sneaky machine didn't give him any credit, so my dad in ninja mode gave the machine a devilish smack, and suddenly it made this noise and started spitting out coins like it had gone into casino mode. People started looking at us and I was all nervous. I just kept picking up coins. In the end, the machine gave out 91 pesos. But as we were leaving, my dad said this wasn't a robbery. It was divine justice with exact change.
No, it's not stealing if you take it quickly.
Once I became the biggest liar in the world because I promised I would never get angry playing video games again. But my words lasted exactly half a match because I was playing Fortnite. And because of my friend Kalaka, I got killed. And to top it off, I see Panza shooting at a rock thinking it was an enemy. And then my buddy Chupon was making fun of me. So I had a fit of rage. I threw the controller and yelled at them, "I don't want to be your friend anymore!" And I left the group, but then I regretted it. I apologized, promised to change, and they accepted me. But the bad thing is that we lost again like total bots, but this time with hugs.
One more and you're dead.
One time when we went to the beach, Sardino started yelling, "I see a shark, but it's shining," and we all went into aquatic apocalypse mode. Because a fluorescent shark sounds like Jurassic Park level, and there were ladies running with fish ceviche, kids crying. Panzas was recording everything in Animal Planet documentary mode, and my grandma Chona was praying in made-up Latin. Then the lifeguard comes and says, "That's not a shark, it's a kayak with LED lights." But we had already evacuated the beach like it was the end of the world. And since that day, that sighting is called the Festive Plastic Megalodon.
Bam! We catch ourselves a baby hammerhead. Look at him. He's so cool.
Once when it was like the end of the financial world, a king went far away and left his fortune to 3 servants. To one, a suitcase full of gold. To another, a diamond. And to the last one, only a sad coin. But the first one said, "I'm going to multiply this like a crazy trader." And he doubled everything in record time. The second one did the same. He invested, he traded, he moved, and he brought everything back doubled. Then the third one arrives, trembling with fear of failure. He dug a hole and buried his coin so he wouldn't lose it. But when the king returns home, he checks the accounts and rewards those who took risks because they trusted. But the one who buried his talent, he scolded him. He told him that fear had made him useless, and Jesus dropped this bomb so we would understand it today. If you hide the gifts God gave you, not only do you not grow, you fade away. One time I couldn't hold it anymore, so I peed in a public park. But it was a lousy day since I've always needed to pee a lot. So that day we were far from any bathroom. And well, I decided to go by a little tree. But then I hear a voice behind me that says, "Hey kid, what are you doing?" But I didn't stop my stream. So I turned around to see who had spoken to me. And I peed all over the leg of a person wearing black pants. But as I looked up, I realized it was a cop. And well, the good thing is they didn't take me to jail because I was 10 years old.
Hey, I'm calling you from prison.
Once when I was a kid, I thought there was a baby jaguar in the OXXO because I saw some spots moving behind the Fanta fridge. And I slowly approached like a National Geographic cameraman to see if it really was. And I shouted,
"Everyone in the OXXO, run! There's a wild animal!"
So, because of me, a lady who was about 99 years old standing next to me fainted because she checked to see if it was real. Then she sees it and confirms,
"It's true, oh my god!"
And the cashier, being a real coward, locked himself in the storeroom praying because he didn't sign up to die like this. But then my uncle Don Camaron shows up with a broomstick, moves the fridge, and it was a really fat cat with a patchy bag stuck to it. And obviously the fainted old lady found out. And now every time she saw me at the OXXO, she would chase me with her cane to hit me on the head. One time, my mom said the forbidden word to me because I heard her yelling from the living room saying,
"Manuel, come here!"
It wasn't a normal "come here," but one filled with centuries of ancestral anger. I walked toward her like a condemned man, mentally listing all my sins from that day. I left the glass dirty, I lost the yogurt lid, I told her in a minute. 3 times, anything was possible. Then, when I got there, she points the TV remote at me and says, "Can you explain why this won't turn on?" And it turned out the TV wasn't turning on because it was unplugged. So I plugged it in without saying a word, and my mom just said, "Thank you, engineer. I forgive you for all your sins." And since that day, every time I don't behave, I unplug the TV so she'll call me and I can save her again.
We're active. Pre. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Why? Well, because we have to give thanks.
One time, my girlfriend got really mad at me because we had bought a refrigerator, but that thing had a factory sticker and I ended up ruining the refrigerator because she told me,
"Leave it on. I'll remove it since you don't know how."
And I replied, no, honey, you always want to do everything. Now it's my turn. But since I'm clumsy and have big, clumsy hands, I started taking off the sticker with some scissors, and obviously I was scratching up the whole surface of the brand new fridge. When she saw what I was doing, she just stared at me like this.
"What are you doing? That's why I told you I was going to do it myself, tiny dick."
Once when I was 11 years old, I made my whole school believe that I had a real pepper spray because my cousin in Sardinia had given me a fake one that they sold at a joke shop, but it looked exactly like the real thing. It had a cap, a button, and even made the pish sound. But well, it was actually just air. So everyone saw me as the dangerous one in the class. But one day, while I was messing around, I pressed the button in front of the principal and the sound was so loud that they activated the emergency protocol and gave me a report. One time, when I was a kid, I went to a party because it was my buddy Pansas' birthday, but then his uncle showed up a little drunk with a SpongeBob piñata, bragging that he was going to break the piñata with a single hit. And we all got closer excited, but he swung the stick so hard that it broke and hit Aunt Lupita right on the head. Then chaos broke out. Kids were screaming, candy was flying everywhere, and SpongeBob was split in half, and Pansas just started crying. And the funniest part is that my cousin Sardina was just recording everything like a reporter. And now every time there's a party, we check the uncle's stick before he hits anything. One time when I was 10 years old, my dad thought the devil had gotten into my dragon toys. And he threw them all in the trash because my dad listens to and watches a lot of news, but sometimes those media outlets are really stupid and say nonsense. So one morning he turned on the radio and a man started talking who said,
"People, if you love your children, throw away their dragon toys because those creatures belong to Satan."
And my dad didn't think twice. He rushed off, grabbed a black bag, and started throwing away all my little toys one by one. But then, when I came back from school, I saw my toy box and it was empty. And I said to my dad,
"Hey, where are my little toys?"
And he says to me, "I threw them away because they're from the devil, son." And I started crying because that wasn't true.
Mama, I'm a criminal. Mama, I'm a criminal. Mama,